least the flock has drawn them out. Based upon the rhetoric of King Bibi. Operation True Promise 4 in effect.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be...
This guy lies more than Trump.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to do it.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the rich uranium for an atom bomb. Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a decade.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
Leading up to now, the least of the flock. Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakakadash, double honors, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth with sincerity, and shout out to Yakims out there in the four quarters of the earth who claim this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakakadash, Brakatum. So, pretty much following up from yesterday. Obviously, things have just amped up, as this is day 2 of the war, but, you know, the official announcement from Donald Trump, and, you know, just pretty much, it's here. World War III is here. Sergei Lavrov, as well as Vladimir Putin, already said that World War III isn't coming. It's officially here. So, everything leading up to it. Now, the nuclear destruction comes after the MOTB is mandated, which, obviously, having a war, and I've said it before, and many others have already said it, that, well, out of war, you create the crisis, all the things leading up to world economic woes, you know, Strait of Hormuz being closed, etc., and, you know, inflation, hyperinflation, all those things happening due to a war. That can speed things up really quick. The Most High is moving quick. Just right before the Passover, I said that there would probably be war either before or after the Passover. Well, it just happened to be before, you know. But nonetheless, though, things are speeding up.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats.
Hundreds were killed
Iranian
in retaliatory
regime,
strikes, which we'll get into that.
Of very hard, terrible people. Its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. For 47 years, the Iranian regime has chanted death to America and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder, targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many, many countries. Among the regime's actions to back a violent takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, holding dozens of American hostages for 444 days. In 1983, Iran's proxies carried out the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut that killed 241 American military personnel. In 2000, they knew and were probably involved with the attack on the USS Cole. Many died. Iranian forces killed and maimed hundreds of American service members.
You mean the Israelis did that?
Proxies have continued to launch countless attacks against American forces stationed in the Middle East in recent years, as well as U.S. naval and commercial vessels in international shipping lanes. It's been mass terror, and we're not going to put up with it any longer. From Lebanon to Yemen and Syria to Iraq, the regime has armed, trained, and funded terrorist militias.
You have trained terrorists. You created ISIS.
And it was Iran's proxy, Hamas, that launched the monstrous October 7th attacks on Israel, slaughtering more than 1,000 innocent people, including 46 Americans, while taking 12 of our
That whole thing was a false flag.
It was brutal.
You already know.
Like the world has never seen before. Iran is the world's #1 state sponsor of terror, and just recently killed tens of thousands of its own citizens on the street as they protested. It has always been the policy of the United States, in particular, my administration, that this terrorist regime can never have a nuclear weapon. I'll say it again. They can never have a nuclear weapon. That is why in Operation Midnight Hammer last June, we obliterated the regime's nuclear program at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After that attack, we warned them never to resume their malicious pursuit of nuclear weapons, and we sought repeatedly to make a deal. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. They didn't know what was happening. They just wanted to practice evil. But Iran refused, just as it has for decades and decades. They rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions, and we can't take it anymore.
Shalom. Giving all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the bishops of Great Millstone. And Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Kodash, Brakatham, to the 144,000 servants, as well as the remaining elect of Israel. So this is breaking news concerning what's happening out there in the Middle East. As you see here, this is a headline from CNN. It says, US and Israel attack Iran. Tehran retaliates across Middle East. So again, what's happening right now is the brewing, the stirring up of the third woe that we read about in the book of Revelation 11, verse 14, where it says, the second woe has passed, which the second woe is referring to World War II. That took place between the years of 1939 to 1945. And then it goes on to say, behold, the third woe cometh quickly. The third woe is referring to World War III. Okay, that's the war that's on the horizon. That's the war that all these nations around the world are preparing for. Okay, as a matter of fact, as it says here in the book of Joel, chapter 3 and verse 9, it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, and that's what we do as the servants, the prophets of Yahweh Bashem Shai, beginning with the men of Great Millstone. It says, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. So what's going to happen, or what's happening right now, I should say, is that the nations, the countries around the world are preparing for World War III. And the Lord is going to bring all these nations into the valley of Jehoshaphat, as it's written here. When we go to the top of this chapter, Joel 3 verse 1, for behold, in those days and in that time, which we're living in those days and in that time right now, which is the last days, wherein the Edomites are ruling, right, the end of the world, as it's known in the book of 2nd Ezra 6 verse 9. Esau is the end of the world, Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. That's the time frame we're living in. When I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. So this is speaking about how our Lord, Yahweh Bashem Shai, is going to end our captivity as Israelites, primarily out here in America, Babylon the Great, okay, and wherever we're scattered around the world. And our Lord is going to deliver the elect of Israel during this time, all right? And that the salvation is going to come by way of Yahweh Shai coming back with the holy angels, and what people out there call UFOs, pursuant to Matthew 24, verse 31. You've also got Jeremiah 16, verses 14 to 15, Isaiah 26, verse 20, Psalm 68, verse 17, and a host of other scriptures. But here's the point in verse 2. I will also gather all nations. I will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And that's what's happening right now, where the Lord is getting these nations prepared for World War III, and he's bringing them down into the Middle East, which is the valley of Jehoshaphat. Okay, that whole region is a hotbed for World War III. You know, the Persian Gulf, the desert of Saudi Arabia, towards the Red Sea, and all throughout the river Euphrates, that whole region, which is currently being dried up, because you know there's going to be a gathering of the troops in that region, and that's pursuant to Revelation 16. Okay, now Jehoshaphat in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shaphat. Okay, Yahweh, that's the true name, the ancient Hebrew name of our Heavenly Father. Okay, the Most High Power. His son's name is Yahweh Shai. And that's who's going to deliver us. Deliver the elect, Lord willing, we're of the elect. Okay, it says, I will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage, Israel. And when you go into this word plead in the Hebrew, you find the Hebrew word shapat, which means judgment, okay, or decision, punishment. Again, that goes into Jehoshaphat, Yahweh Shapat, which basically means Yahweh judges, okay, or Yahweh's punishment. So our Lord is going to punish these nations and their armies out there in the Middle East, okay, for his heritage, Israel. Right now, our heritage, or the Lord's heritage, goes into, you know, his people, the Israelites, our so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and it also goes into the land of Israel that's currently being occupied by our enemies. The main enemy being Esau, Edom, okay, and their head tribe, the tribe of Amalek, okay, these small hands that's out there in our land, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land, okay, and our enemies, Esau, Edom, along with the Ishmaelites, they scattered our people during the transatlantic slave trade, okay, the triangular slave trade, where we were being shipped, you know, around the world on cargo slave ships, according to the curse, Deuteronomy 28 verse 68, Deuteronomy 28 verse 64, okay, and our land is divided, the land of Israel. Look up the term, the partition of Israel, okay. As a matter of fact, let me do that for you right now. What is the partition of Israel? The partition of Israel usually refers to the 1947 United Nations partition plan for Palestine, which proposed dividing the British Mandate of Palestine into two separate states, one Jewish and one Arab. Right, so out there in our land you have Amalek and Ishmael occupying our land. Okay. It says, with Jerusalem under international administration, the Jewish leadership accepted the plan, but the Arab leadership rejected it, leading to the 1948 Arab-Israeli war after Israel declared independence. Anyway, so that's going into our land being divided. Okay. So, again, you know, World War III is on the horizon. And what we're seeing here in the news is Jeremiah 49 and verse 20 taking place. The least of the flock shall draw them out.
And that's where we're at, you know. And it's good to see these scriptures come to pass. Now, like everything else, though, you know, this is the moment that, yes, Ayatollah Khomeini, it is affirmative that Ayatollah Khomeini was killed in those strikes. So that's not the Iranian president, but that is their renowned leader was killed in the strikes. So play a short clip here from that, and well, go to Press TV Live, you know, because yeah, there's channels still up now. They removed their they used to have an app on Roku. They've removed that since the start of this war. Used to be an app you could actually play on your Roku device, but now you can only play it through Rumble if you are to catch Press TV, because they took down the YouTube channel long ago. So this is the moment that happened on Press TV, which was watching throughout the day yesterday. And like everything else, though, hundreds have been killed in the retaliatory strikes. They're not going to tell you that on the mainstream.
As you see in the bottom of your screen, Iran's leader, the leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, has been martyred. It's now confirmed. Iran's leader, the leader of Iran's Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, has been martyred in the U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran. So this piece of news now is confirmed. This is obviously a very difficult piece of news to be relayed to the audiences that are watching us. It's been confirmed. We obviously have our channels that, after their thorough investigation, have concluded and have confirmed this. Obviously, the question now becomes, and the playing field at this point may change, even though high-ranking Iranian officials have said that no matter who is martyred in this aggression against the Islamic Republic, there always will be contingency plans not only in place, but also figures that will be come into play here.
So, like everything else, though, yeah, you kill one, you got several more. Now I'm going to go to Press TV Live, you know, because this is ongoing right now, so it's just good to catch it in live mode. If I can get this. Okay, there it goes. Like I said, live mode doesn't usually work very good, but I'll try.
That's another possible card to play by Iran.
All right, well,
Ali Risk, I want to thank you very much for being with us on this discussion. And of course, I want to ask you to stay with Press TV for the latest developments. And of course, we'll be right back.
Tonight on Expose, across the mainstream American media, coverage of Iran has shifted dramatically. From cautious speculative timelines present war as administratively routine and inevitable. Then we turn to the theatrics of Fox News and CNN, where altered imagery, countdowns and repeated leaks turn potential conflict into spectacle. However, on social media, voices on X expose the hypocrisy and warmongering.
So, like everything else, leading to what happened yesterday. So here it is.
Just smaller resistance groups were not traditional armies. To one extent, it sometimes gets to your head, this is human nature. There's nothing wrong with that. It is human nature. But that is basically what you call the chink in the armor that the Israelis use to cap on this matter, and then basically they go for the kill. And in that sense, I do believe that over the course of the past 2 years and a half, the Israelis had enough time on intervals during negotiations to replenish, study us, and then come back. So they never went into what you call a war of depletion or war of attrition on a longer run that would actually cause them enough harm. The first 3 months of the war actually caused them more harm than the rest of the period. Why? Because the first 3 months they had to put in a lot of money to support their currency, nearly $40 billion that was asked from the central bank of the Israeli entity. Amir Yaron was like, the military was begging him to actually release more money to support the currency. It was dropping down. They had to issue bonds. They were borrowing beyond their capacity at one point or another. It was the first time in the Israeli history that they issued trenches that in terms of billions of dollars, at $1.80 billion in the first year of this war. So at the end of the day, when they start borrowing from the international market, that means their source of financing from Europe was going down because of European economic crisis. We should have kept that down on that. When I covered it, people didn't look at the economic side, and that's the sad part. So going forward, I do hope that we learn from this part. The Israelis still cannot fight for a longer run. We can push them for a longer run and then basically cut the finances, just like they're cutting something else away from us.
To keep our viewers up to speed on the latest, of course, we have the Israeli radio has said that the head of the municipality of Beit Shemesh said that an Iranian rocket reached a shelter, a general shelter or a secure area directly, and that has led to casualties. I'm not sure if this is the first time that we see the rocket actually reach one of those secure shelters within the Israeli regime. But we also have the fact that the Navy, when it comes to the naval issues, we have one of the
like everything else, they don't like light mode. Yeah, Esau doesn't like it when you watch Press TV.
Islands
won't even work on the fucking Roku. So I'm just surprised I got that much
was, of course,
from it.
near Amman.
I'm going to get out of this mode, but you can see, though, that indeed they can bust bunkers, too, that the U.S. and the Israeli state are not the only ones that have bunker-busting bombs, but the rocket that did attack was one of those that they couldn't detect. And there's going to be a lot more newer, sophisticated rockets and attacks going to happen. You know, hey, you know, and don't forget, Magog is eventually going to join the fight too. Russia condemns unprovoked armed attack against Iran by the U.S. and Israeli state. So this is coming from Sergei Lavrov. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Saturday condemned the unprovoked armed attack on Iran by the U.S. and Israeli state. In a phone call with Iranian Foreign Minister Agashi, Lavrov said the strikes on Iran violate the principles and norms of international law and disregard the grave consequences for regional and global stability and security. He noted Russia's readiness, including at the UN Security Council, to facilitate the search for peaceful solutions on international law, mutual respect, and balance of interest. Lavrov emphasized the need to immediately cease attacks against Iran and return to a political and diplomatic solution. So, like everything else, though, we'll just see what Russia does. Like I said before, you know, there's a few things that need to happen before, you know, they do join the fight. However, though, that doesn't mean that they aren't already supplying Iran with weapons and defense. You already seen some of the defense weapons that have already been sent in there. But economically, we already know what that did to the Israeli state, throughout the year, just from what Iran hit in the retaliatory strikes, is these ones are going to be even bigger than they were last year. Well, like everything else, though, what did the U.S. do? They stole Venezuela, and just right before they started this, Venezuela oil was exclusive to the Israeli state. Not to you at the gas pump. No, not for you. No, that's for the Israeli state. Pretty much it was the Israeli state's idea to go and get rid of Maduro and then seize all the oil so they would have unlimited fuel supplies coming into the Israeli state. That's what taking over Venezuela is really about. It had nothing to do with, anything else. We already know that, there were no narco-terrorists coming in from Venezuela. In fact, they're coming from Florida and going down into those states because Cuba has already caught some of the, terrorists, the narco-terrorists that Esau loves to so blatantly put. But the narco-terrorists are actually coming from Florida and going into those countries. But you ain't going to hear that on the U.S. news. What war with Iran could mean for markets Monday. Traders will be closely watching for updates on crude production and shipping disruptions. And any spike in oil will move across global rates at FX and eventually weigh on equities. But Trump pro-strike comments make it harder for markets to assume this is one and done. A limited strike would see the usual pattern. Crude and gold spike, equus wobble, then volatility compress if production is unaffected and the Strait of Hormuz flows keep moving. Well, they've already closed that, by the way. So, it's already closed. So, with the Strait of Hormuz closed, so these are the places that were hit. Tehran being the main one, and taking out Ayatollah Khamenei is the main one. But nonetheless, though, more perspective, right? As their war of terror continues, and Operation True Promise 4 happens.
Let's cross live now to journalist and Going Underground host Afshin Rotansi. Afshin, thanks for joining us on the program today. So apparently the US had this date earmarked. Iran knew all about it. How surprised were you by Donald Trump's use of military force against Iran, and why take such an aggressive action when the president has been publicly talking about his hopes for peace?
Smoke and mirrors. I'm sure he's going to say that.
Yes, I think lots of journalists all around the world, I hope, understood that Trump telegraphed that he was going to do this. The Iranians should have been well prepared, and are saying that they were prepared for these acts of aggression under the UN Charter. As to why he would take these steps, I mean, there's a lot of people speculating that the Epstein documents, there must be one hell of a lot of compromise on Trump to violate the terms in which he was elected in the United States as a no-war president, as he plunges the United States into a war that will certainly, his name will be associated with, and it's career suicide. I should tell you, I'm speaking to you from Dubai. There's the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, behind me, very much still upright, and tells
yeah, you saw that building in Fast and Furious
of
movie.
Dubai are greatly exaggerated, grossly exaggerated so far.
Yeah, I mean, everyone seemed to be in the know, and considering the presence of these US bases in Gulf Arab states, how prepared do you think these countries were for a potential Iranian attack?
I mean, unfortunately, it has to be said, away from the great grand geopolitical chessboard, there have been deaths, and one has to remember that what Trump has done is to slaughter people. I mean, the Iranians are reporting just now, in the past few minutes, 53 killed students, women students killed in the town of Minab in a girls' school in Iran. We don't have any firm confirmation of that. One person killed up the road from where I am speaking to you in Abu Dhabi. There certainly cannot be enough preparation for modern warfare, as these missiles are clearly so inaccurate and so able to go astray. Why would the Americans target a girls' school?
Because that's what Esau does. That's all he knows.
And whether they're prepared, you know, some people might have said that Iran should have acted as soon as the warships were going into the Gulf in the first place.
Yeah, we have a poor connection with you, Afshin, but we're going to persevere. Russia has responded to the strikes on Iran. It's condemned them. They said they were committed under the, quote, guise of a renewed negotiation process, much like they were last year. It almost feels like deja vu, doesn't it? So what happens from this point? Will Iran and the US go back to the negotiating table as planned in Vienna next week, or is that...
That's rhetorical, of course not.
After the strikes today?
Are saying yes, go back to the negotiating table, as are the Omanis. How can one negotiate, one might ask? Of course, also the GCC countries have condemned Iran for the actions of Iran. Reports of a Saudi foreign ministry statement saying that Saudi Arabia will join up with the United States in this attack on Iran now. So it's a very dangerous situation that Trump and the Trump administration has capitalized, and most of the world, most of humanity, is against it.
You know, Trump has let this all take place overnight. He's due to address the nation this morning, maybe in the next hour or so. What do you think he will have hoped has been achieved over the past few hours? And what do you think he's going to say?
Hey, he did it for, we already know what he said, so, you know, they did it because, you know, those people, they gave their lives, and, you know, it's great, you know, it's fucking great, and, you know, Iran's terrible people, that's what he said. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, killed in U.S.-Israeli strikes. Key figure in Iran's Islamic Revolution, Khamenei was killed along with his daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter. So they wiped out his entire family. And this was an Israeli strike, and it was a newer missile that they could not detect. Iran's supreme leader was killed on Saturday after the U.S. and Israeli state launched massive aerial strikes against Tehran. Announcer appearing on state television broke down in tears early Sunday, confirming the killing, saying the 86-year-old achieved his long-cherished wish of martyrdom in the holy month of Ramadan. Today, Iran, the Islamic nations, and freedom seekers across the world are grieving the evil attacks by the criminal Americans and wicked Zionists, he said. Yeah, so like everything else, though, things are going to escalate a lot more. Now, there's been a lot killed in the retaliatory strikes, which, again, the U.S. is not going to be honest about the numbers. Leader of the Islamic Revolution martyred in cowardly Israeli-American aggression. Ayatollah Khamenei's residence in Tehran was targeted Saturday morning, which many of his family members, including his daughter, son-in-law, and grandchild, were also martyred. His martyrdom at the hands of the most wretched terrorists and executioners of humanity as a sign of righteousness of this great leader and the acceptance of his sincere services, read the statement. Yeah, so like everything else, we'll play a little bit of this if it'll...
His people, by his country, and not by only a country as dear as it is, as dear as Iran is, not by a country limited by borders, because he stood for the children in Palestine. He stood for the children in Lebanon. Today, those mourning him will be the orphans across the world, as the orphans mourned our Imam Ali. Peace be upon him. Today, the devils of the world will celebrate, and everybody has managed to brainwash. But this is not over. Trump is going to pay a price, paid by no American president at all time, paid by no Zionist of all time, paid by no criminal of all time. Trump is going to see, because revenge is coming, and revenge is coming soon, and revenge is coming after Trump, after everybody who facilitated this assassination. He will pay the ultimate price. And it's not only by the millions of Iranians, it's not only by the millions in resistance countries, it's also by those who have newly joined the resistance, by the Americans, by the Europeans, who saw the resistance of Imam Khomeini against Zionism only after all those years of accusing him of being anti-West for no reason, of saying down with Israel for no reason. But he was the one, he was the power that the oppressed of the world would gather at his address and would say with honor and with pride and with power, they would say, down with USA, down with Israel. And now the people of the world know today, everybody across the world who understands what justice is, who understands what Zionism is, will shout, down with USA, down with Israel, down with the Zionist regime. This is the day, and this will not end, and this will not end pretty for Trump. They will see what they have done. They will see the result of their violence. And Imam Khomeini will go down in history, as did Imam Ali, as did Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah.
So, you heard it first, and the sentiment is there. You know, there were people gathered all over, you know, especially in Times Square and in LA, very large Babylonian cities, to condemn the attacks, you know, and like everything else, so, hey man, we're just at the beginning. We're already in day 2, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more going on, as this is ongoing. I go and teach in just a little while. Yeah, I'm going to go on the streets and teach, you know, today being Sunday and all. Officially beginning March, right? Has World War III just started? What's happening between the U.S.-Israeli state and Iran? U.S.-Israeli strikes against Iran could provoke global economic crisis as well as war in West Asia. No shit. I think that it's rhetorical. The U.S. and Israeli state launched their major attack in order to waste too much of Iran's military, as well as deny it the ability to build a nuclear weapon, according to President Trump. In response, Iran launched a wave of strikes across West Asia, targeting several countries that host U.S. military bases. Blasts were heard on the beaches of Dubai to the streets of Doha in what could be the opening of salvos of a war that threatens to engulf the region. Well, like everything else, though, the least of flock is the one that drew them in, man. Gonna make their habitations desolate because of them. And you already know the sentiment there. And a lot of people are going to say down with Israel, down with the U.S. Dozens killed by Israeli strike on girls' elementary school in southern Iran, you know. That was another thing. That killed quite a few. The unprovoked attacks launched under the banner of Operation Epic Fury, targeting both military and civilian sites throughout Iran. At least 80 were killed and dozens more were injured from Israeli strike to hit elementary school. I knew it was the Israelis that did that, you know, because they purposely do that. You know, the U.S. Does whatever the Israeli state tells them to. Israeli army says it has continued to strike a wide range of targets in western Iran as part of Operation Lion's Roar, adding that it has hit hundreds of Iranian military sites, including missile launches, while air defenses work to intercept projectiles fired from Iran. And Iran's already saying that what they fired so far is their old stuff. Get ready for the new. So it's just a matter of, you know, seeing these go into effect, and this is going to get more exciting. Of course, as you know, IRGC launches new wave of missiles at the Israeli state and Babylonian targets. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps launched the third and fifth wave of its retaliatory military operation late Saturday by launching a barrage of missiles at the Israeli-occupied territories. In a statement at around 1145 local time, the IRGC Public Relations Division said the third and fourth wave of Operation True Promise 4 were launched against the extensive military targets of the U.S. and Zionist regime. He said the operation was carried out with missiles more advanced than those used in Operation True Promise 4 during the 12-day war in June last year, with greater precision and ferocity. So, like everything else, though, you can see some of this.
And the Israelis, I think that's what the calculation now is. Regime preservation. Could you get a more pragmatic figure presiding over this regime? Sure.
Aaron, I just want to break in for a moment, because we're looking at live pictures in the air over Tel Aviv, and obviously, as many people know, or maybe don't know, there is an Iron Dome that Israel uses as its missile defense system, and we're seeing it working now. But in some places and instances, it does not work, and I believe this is one missile feasibly that has broken through the Iron Dome.
Iron Dome sucks. They won't tell you that. So they want you to think that the casualties are very low on that side. Blasts hit Dubai and Abu Dhabi in United Arab Emirates, sucked into the U.S.-Israeli conflict with Iran. Residents watched plumes of smoke rise in Gulf state cities, while some urged to evacuate from their homes. Explosives hit Dubai and Abu Dhabi on Saturday, as the United Arab Emirates was one of the several Gulf states sucked into the U.S.-Israeli aggression against Iran. However, some missiles and drones appear to be making it through the United Arab Emirates air defenses. So, like everything else, yeah. All these places that host the bases are getting hit. Iraq's Ayatollah Khomeini urges Iranian unity after Khomeini's death. Iraq's Grand Ayatollah Khomeini mourned Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini and called on Iranians to maintain their unity after his death. Well, of course they will. Because like everything else, he stood against the Zionist regime. I mean, a lot of them, are going to feel that way. Are going to, it's going to be like a 3-day mourning that they'll have. Iraq's top Shia Muslim cleric, Grand Ayatollah al-Sisi, on Sunday urged Iranians to remain united as Iraqis mourn the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei following his death in U.S.-Israeli strikes. Baghdad announced a 3-day mourning period for Khamenei, who had been Iran's spiritual guide and top political authority since 1989. Through this martyrdom and the large-scale military assault against Iran, the enemy sought to inflict immense damage on the beloved country. The great Iranian people are expected to maintain their unity, to stand firm and thwart the aggressors. Sinister goals, the city add in a statement. Khamenei's death was met with anger in Baghdad, where hundreds of protesters have tried since the hours of Sunday to storm the fortified green zone where the U.S. Embassy is located. So like everything else, though, you can see a lot more uprisings. I mean, it tells you that, as you get towards the very last book. And like everything else, Richie from Boston, has his little take on it, so we'll play some of that. And we got a few more videos here. I got mostly videos here, because, this is ongoing,
Shall we?
So as you know, he does a lot of videos. He definitely spoke against the pandemic, that was all deliberate to get everybody to submit and to take the vaccination that has killed people. And he was one of the first to say that it wasn't real. Well, how much more when the MOTB comes out?
I got called in by an officer on the Joint Staff who told me that, he said, we're going to invade Iraq. I said, but why? And he said, I don't know. He said, I guess because we don't know what else to do. But in fact, the why of it went back a decade, to the spring of 1991. It went back to the argument inside the Republican Party.
And King Bibi was behind all of it.
Whether or not the Gulf War should have ended with the capture of Baghdad and the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. And in 1991, when I talked to Secretary Wolfowitz, he said, we didn't get rid of Saddam Hussein, and we should have. He said, we've only got 5 or 10 years to clean up the Middle East. These old Soviet surrogate regimes like Syria and Iraq, get rid of them before the next superpower comes along with challenges. We didn't foresee that we'd actually be using force aggressively to change regimes. And it appeared full-blown after 9/11. And somehow, in the minds of the American people, the attack run by Osama bin Laden, based out of Afghanistan, became part of Saddam Hussein. And to retaliate and make sure that, and it was phrased in many different ways. There was effort in the intelligence community to prove that Saddam Hussein had somehow been connected to the strikes in New York and against the Pentagon. And then there was the idea that, well, but he might have some weapons of mass destruction, biological, chemical, nuclear weapons that he could give to terrorists, despite the fact that Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda couldn't have been further apart in terms of working together as allies. And if you put them under enough pressure, maybe they would team up against the United States. But we created that pressure against Saddam Hussein for our own reasons. What were those reasons? We've never really heard. There was no single reason. There was some weapons of mass destruction, possibly, that were still there, but we had 10 years for the UN Special Commission. We'd had the strikes, Operation Desert Fox in December of '98, taking out all the sites that we knew about then through intelligence. Maybe there was some unaccounted for scuds that they said had been fired in training. Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe there was some material that you could, culture material that you could throw bioweapons in. But there wasn't much that I knew of. And I've been reading all the intelligence until I retired. So I began to see that, and I thought back to the conversation with Wolfowitz, and I thought what I'd been told inside the Pentagon, and I began to smell something that didn't smell right.
Stopped. Iran could produce a nuclear weapon
and here
in
we
a very
go.
short time. It could
Release
be
the flock.
They have the wherewithal, the stored up, preserved knowledge to make a bomb very quickly if they wanted to.
Iran is so dangerous. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb. Iran is gearing up to produce 25 bombs, atomic bombs a year, 250 bombs in a day. Iran will be capable of producing alone, without importing anything, nuclear bombs within 3 to 5 years.
So here you go.
Oh my God. مسيرة يا شباب مسيرة اضرب 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 عدل.
So here we are. We're at war with Iran, and apparently we've already killed the Ayatollah, according to U.S. and Israeli sources. I don't know how they would know that we killed him, but that's what they're claiming. So at the end of this video, Hours of Horror is going to explain this well, because I was going to make a video. Well, you know what? You'll see it when we get there. But this is what Donald Trump has to say about all this right here. You know, the guy that said we're not going to war, and Barack Obama was a jerk because he could have just brought them to the table. Iran didn't want nuclear weapons. They wanted nuclear power. And according to the White House, back in June of 2026, 2025, we already completely obliterated their capabilities. They have no capabilities. Anyone saying anything otherwise is fake news. Really? So then what's this all about?
Interests. We are going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. We're going to annihilate their navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces, and no longer use their IEDs or roadside bombs, as they are sometimes called, to so gravely wound and kill thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. This regime will soon learn that no one should challenge the strength and might of the United States Armed Forces. I built and rebuilt our military in my first administration, and there is no military on earth even close to its power, strength, or sophistication. My administration has taken every possible step to minimize the risk to U.S. personnel in the region. Even so,
you will pay for everything, as the woman said.
The Iranian regime seeks to kill. The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war.
Yep, there you go.
Not for now.
It's
We're
cool.
doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission.
It's cool.
We pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans
just a part of war
will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran. We ask God to protect all of our heroes in harm's way, and we trust that
hundreds
with his
were
help,
killed in the retaliatory
the men and women
strikes.
of the armed
That's what
forces
they're not going to tell
will
you.
prevail. We have the greatest in the world, and they will prevail.
So some Americans just will have to die in order to have a greater Israel, because that's what this is all about. This has nothing to do with anything. According to the White House.gov, it's still up on their site right now, Iran's nuclear capabilities were obliterated back in June of 2025. And here's the fun thing. The only people in the Middle East with nukes, or in that region, I should say, with nukes, are Israel. And the reason we know this, I've been telling you about that, the Samson option for years, but the reason we know this is because Netanyahu told Trump that if we don't strike, they'll nuke them. And that would be a problem. You see what I'm saying? Even though nukes aren't real or whatever, I don't want to get into that right now, but Israel completely 100% owns our country. It's why there's an Israeli star on the back of your dollar bill. And when you look at the 6 points of the star, it spells out the word Masons. I've shown you this millions of years ago. So many other channels have done the same. This is utterly insane, man. It's insane. And listen to this. Here's a funny tweet from 2025 where Trump said, Sheldon Adelson is looking to give big dollars to Rubio because he feels he can mold him into his perfect little puppet. And I agree. Well, that's funny because here's now where Trump has Sheldon Adelson's wife on stage, and she just gave the Trump campaign $250 million, $250 million. So who's the puppet now? Before we go any further, this is...
So, like everything else, though, from his perspective, but you see how everything controls it, right? And here's a good collage of videos on what the strikes actually look like. And I remember watching Press TV yesterday as it showed you the footage of this, and it did say hundreds were killed in retaliatory strikes. The U.S. News is not going to tell you that. Of course not. They want you to think that it's just simple, that they could overthrow Iran like they did with Iraq, especially with the Supreme Leader dead. It's not going to be that easy. President of Iran is still alive. So for us that's been suffering, for a long time, it's a great day for us, for us here at Great Millstone on down, because we're starting to see the Most High take action and finally start to punish these nations, and this is the beginning of it. Hundreds were killed yesterday in the retaliatory strikes, which they are not going to tell the people, right? Because they want you to think it's going to be like, Iraq, that they can just do this, the martyrdom. And the martyrs will come out, and like everything else, though, you already heard the emotions of just one reporter there, right? So, yeah. And they're going to have more unity. They're not going to just want a regime change. Iran is not going to have a regime change like Syria and Iraq did. Yeah, this is going to be met with missiles. So here's some of the retaliation there. This is exciting to see. Abad Babal means death to America. So we've been saying it right along with Iran.
Beberapa jam lalu, dunia mencatat eskalasi baru di Timur Tengah. Operasi militer besar dilakukan. Tidak kecil, tidak tiba-tiba. Israel mengumumkan serangan preemptif. Mereka menyebutnya tindakan pencegahan. Langkah untuk menghilangkan ancaman. Kata mereka, ancaman dari program militer Iran. Tidak sendirian. Amerika Serikat turut serta. Koordinasi, koalisi udara, serangan terencana, direncanakan berminggu-minggu sebelum dikerahkan. Operasi itu bukan teori, ini fakta. Ledakan terdengar di Teheran dan kota lain. Wilayah udara ditutup seketika, sirene menggema, sekolah ditutup, kota disiagakan. Israel menegaskan, ini tentang keamanan nasional, ini tentang ancaman yang harus diatasi. Tapi ada pertanyaan besar, apakah keamanan nasional sebanding dengan dampak yang timbul? Serangan dimulai pagi hari, waktu setempat. Gelombang udara, rudal presisi. Target, fasilitas militer. Target, infrastruktur strategis, target, pusat negara. Kota Teheran melihat asap, ledakan mengguncang pusat kota. Listrik dan jaringan komunikasi sempat terganggu. Pernyataan resmi Israel lebih tegas. Mereka menyebutnya aksi pendahuluan untuk melumpuhkan sistem pertahanan Iran, untuk melemahkan apa yang mereka sebut program rudal dan nuklir. Presiden AS juga berbicara. Dalam pesan video, ia menjanjikan operasi serius, menjamin bahwa ancaman akan dihentikan. Ia menyebut ini rusaknya kemampuan militer Iran. Namun, satu hal
And if they take this video down, you know, you can look for me on Odysee, BitChute and Rumble, where I've been the whole time before I started to come back to YouTube. Because YouTube is owned by the Zionists, and for the longest, my videos were coming down, so I just remained over there.
Tidak lama setelah serangan awal, Teheran berbicara, nada tegas, nada defensif.
There's a lot of people that are opposed to this war.
Ini pelanggaran kedaulatan. Ini
Those are
agresi
the two that
terhadap
were
negara
killed. He was
mereka.
also killed, the
Dan
RJC
Iran
commander,
akan
one of
membalas.
them.
Beberapa jam kemudian, serangan balasan dimulai. Iran mengirim rudal. Drone terbang. Tujuan, respon terhadap penetrasi wilayahnya sendiri. Balasan ini bukan sekadar retorika. Israel sendiri mengumumkan keadaan darurat nasional. Sekolah ditutup, kerumunan dilarang, rumah sakit dipindahkan ke tempat aman, reservis dipanggil untuk siaga, dan laporan menunjukkan ledakan terdengar di wilayah utara Israel, menandakan rudal balistik Iran telah memasuki fase respons penuh.
It's just good to see this in a compilation of videos
Iran
showing the
tidak hanya
retaliatory
membalas,
strikes.
Teheran mulai meningkatkan kesiapan jauh lebih luas. Pejabat Iran menyatakan bahwa garis merah telah dilampaui. Tidak ada garis merah lagi, kata mereka dalam pernyataan resmi. Siap untuk respons berikutnya. Komando militer mengumumkan, respons akan datang dalam hitungan jam, dan bukan respons kecil. Bentuknya dirancang lebih besar, termasuk target pangkalan yang menampung pasukan lawan di kawasan Teluk. Bahkan, bukan hanya Israel. Beberapa pangkalan AS di wilayah Arab Teluk juga dikabarkan diserang. Ledakan terdengar di Bahrain dan daerah yang menjadi markas militer besar. Ini bukan lagi respons otomatis. Ini langkah strategis dan menunjukkan bahwa Iran tidak akan berhenti hanya karena serangan awal. Saat kita berbicara strategi dan geopolitik, ada realitas
So
lain.
either way, he's planning for weeks on end, you know, of this.
Orang tua
A lot of people are going to revolt against him. They shall not regard their kings or princes.
Mereka rusak.
A lot of people are not going to support this war.
Transportasi terganggu, komunikasi dan internet tidak stabil. Di Israel pula, rumah sakit relokasi. Masyarakat diberi instruksi tak keluar rumah. Hari biasa berubah jadi siaga darurat. Efeknya menyebar. Maskapai membatalkan penerbangan ke seluruh kawasan. Ekonomi regional terpengaruh. Ini bukan statistik, ini kehidupan nyata. Kehidupan manusia biasa. Sekarang, mari kita telusuri apa arti semua ini. Pertama, eskalasi besar tidak dimulai oleh Iran. Iran adalah pihak yang
this is just only the beginning. This is just day one of that. I mean, we're in day two already.
Balasan Iran bukan sekadar emosional. Bentuknya terukur, strategis, dan menyentuh aspek militer lawan. Ketiga, risiko perang regional jauh lebih tinggi sekarang. Bukan hanya dua negara yang terlibat, negara-negara lain melihat dampaknya langsung. Keempat, banyak suara global kini mengecam tindakan penyerang sebagai agresi tanpa mandat internasional. Dan kelima, korban nyata bukan warna bendera, bukan narasi politik, tetapi kehidupan manusia di tengah konflik. Kita telah melihat urutan kejadian dari serangan awal hingga balasan.
See, the way they were met. They were met. And so amongst this, there are economic repercussions, and this could muster up, the economic collapse and a reason to implement all the changes because of rations, because they need a good crisis, and this war seems to fit that crisis, right? Because the prices are going to rise up. They're already talking about what's going to happen on Monday. The Strait of Hormuz has been closed, so that's going to send gas prices up, and you're already dealing with a tanked economy anyways. Babylon the Great is a joke when it comes to economic growth. There is no growth there. The grinding has ceased. Everything's being replaced by artificial intelligence. So, it's not the superpower that it pretends to be. But make no mistake about it, everybody's going to get drawn into this war. The other Arab states, some are going to defect to the U.S., because they host the U.S. bases. They're going to be dragged into this war. It's not just Babylon that's going to be dragged into the war, but everybody's going to be dragged into this war. All nations are going to be gathering there to fight, and the Valley of Jehoshaphat is, in fact, in that valley, the Valley of Judgment, the Valley of Decision. Jeremiah chapter 49, starting in verse 14. I've heard a message from the Most High Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent to the nations. Gather together and come against her and rise up to the battle. Come up against the U.S. and the Israeli state. For indeed, I will make you small among nations and despised among men. So many nations are going to gather against the small hats in particularly. But just all of Esau, Edom as a whole. Thus talking about Babylon the Great. Edom will be in astonishment. Everyone who goes by it will be astonished and hiss at all the plagues. So, yeah, death is coming to America. Death is coming to Babylon. And like everything else, though, they are going to cheer. Many are going to cheer. As in the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, and their neighbors, saith the Most High, no one shall remain there, nor a son of man dwell in it, because it's going to totally be leveled, and amongst the leveling, the chariots of the Most High is going to gather his elect. We pray we're part of that hopeful elect, that's going to be gathered out of there. Verse 20, this is the main one. Therefore hear the counsel of the Most High that he has taken against Edom and his purposes they have purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Talking about America. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their dwelling places desolate because of them. The small hats that dragged America into this war. The earth shakes at the noise of their fall. At the cry, its noise is heard at the Red Sea. So even more destruction is coming. And that is the retaliation for what they have done, for the war that they just started. He shall come up and fly as the eagle and spread his wings over Basra. The heart of the mighty men of Edom in that day shall be like the heart of a woman in birth pangs. And that is that the chariots of the Most High will be coming to gather the elect, but also destroying this place. That's what's coming to Babylon. And you don't want to be caught up in that judgment, so you have to remain steadfast and not take the mandated MOTB, and you just need a good crisis to implement the MOTB infrastructure and the rationing of world resources. Well, that can happen because of the just alone with this war. So it satisfies both sides. The nuclear destruction will come after the MOTB is mandated. So while we're excited about that, there's still a few things to happen. But we're getting much more closer than we've ever been before. So hopefully this has been edifying. For that I want to say Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem Rakakadosh, Wal Bal Babal. Brakatam, Jehovah elect. Shalom, and just another quick video here as we close this out.
Shalom, shalom. All praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem,
Yahweh, Bahashem, Raha, Kwadash, the Bahara Selda, and the apostles of Mason could well. A peace, blessing, and salutation to you, Akim, who are pushing this through the horns of the heavenly, being at the forefront of the spiritual war, to make sure Jerusalem is established as a praise union again, as in the days of old. So this is 2 Corinthians, the 2nd chapter, and verse 11. It reads, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his device. And that Satan it goes into himself. See, I did a lesson area going to the crisis which is unfolding in the Middle East, because you can't really say it is the start of World War III. That's just a crisis, man, in which it will lead to World War III. So there is a step in this, man. First and foremost, in order for you to implement major change in terms of the infrastructure, because what they want to bring is they want to bring a new infrastructure in which it will make anybody subject to. And that infrastructure is based upon the commerce. In order for you to be able to do commerce, you need that infrastructure. And that infrastructure is not really pleasant to the people, man. It's not really pleasant to the people, so you need a crisis. You need a crisis as a hook. You need a crisis as a hook to make everybody submit. There is a number of things that we can do in order to bring in the crisis. It can be a pandemic, it can be war. So you have a plethora of options he can employ, man. You see? So what's going on in the Middle East, man? Because when you consider the Middle East is called the Middle East for a reason, because it's connecting the West and the East. You see, and that's where, like, is the heart of the world supply chain. The world supply chain is sometimes referred to as artery. You see, if you cut a nation's supply chain, we say you have cut the artery which nourishes that particular country and make it grow. When you go back to different major empires, starting with the Sumerian, which was ancient Babylon, it was established between the Tigris and the Euphrates. And you go back to Kemet, or ancient Egypt, which was established along the Nile River. When you go back to the Assyrian Empire, the same thing, the Babylonian Empire and the Persian Empire. Actually, they were nourished because of robust supply chain. So in order for you to be able to strangle a certain corporation, you need to cut the artery. To cut the artery and to redirect the way you want it to be supplied. That's where you get that term rationing. You ration the resources, man. It's not like the resources are not there. The resources are there, but they are scarce. And that scarcity is man-made. That's what they want to do. They want to create a man-made crisis where resources will be scarce. You see? They will find a way on how to ration that resources, man. That's where you get the new infrastructure of the multi-pay, where these resources will be rationed, and it will be based upon technology, and which that's the multi-pay. That's what they want to accomplish over there in the Middle East. So you need a perfect crisis to bring in a new infrastructure. The infrastructure is already there, but where is the crisis? They create one. And all of these world leaders, be it Ali Khamenei, you see Trump, you see Xi Jinping, you see Kim of North Korea, they all under the banking family. People say that Iran and North Korea, they don't have a central bank because the elite wanted them to not have a central bank so that they can use it as a ruse to engineer crisis. And Iran, when you consider the geographical location of Iran, that's a perfect location to strangle
the whole supply chain, the artery of the whole supply chain, and you have the South China Sea. Well, I was speaking about the Strait of Malacca, so the Strait of Hormuz, and the Al-Mandabu Strait, and the Suez Canal. You see? And in the Latin America, we have the Panama Canal. You see? That's why America sending naval fleet or naval presence over there in the Caribbean Sea. You see, so all of this are tied in, man. You see, all of this are tied in to the MOTB. You see? So the point is you need a crisis, man. You see, you need a crisis. Let me get you another scripture. You see? The book of Habakkuk, man. 2:2 says, the Lord answered me and said, he writes the vision and make it a prayer upon tables, that he may learn that read it. For the vision is yet for a appointed time, but is at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. I say, the vision was the vision of the motivate, it will surely come, eh? You see? It will surely come. So this I say shalom. I hope you are edified. On to the next.